Before I continue discussing the markets, please take this moment now with helping me and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click subscribe. Click this bell. Click all. This helps you receive a notification when I post my next videos. Next, click the thumbs up button every time you watch my videos. Okay, let's continue with the view of the markets. Hello there, welcome to another video of Winning Wall Street's Money. It's the first full trading week of the new year we've just completed. My goal this month is to have 100 new subscribers. And if you haven't already, then take a moment now and click and subscribe below the button. It's free. I really appreciate it. In this video, I will review where leadership is appearing for currencies. The top two things I'm looking for in the chart are the following. Has the weekly price surpassed and closed above last week's? As well surpass and close above the highs of last year, 2020. A little note here, historically, January tends to be a good month for the US dollar. Yeah, the question is, will sentiment impact the greenback's seasonality this time around? Well, time will tell. First, we're going to look at yields since they help make interest rates higher and affect the US dollar. Higher interest rates give strength to the US dollar. That's why I believe it's very important to watch interest rates. Watch the yields, which affect the interest rates. So these are the yields. This is a 1 year chart. Each candle is a week, and we already completed a full week. This is the 30-year yield. Green for the week. We took out the high of last week. Look at this. The momentum's going up. That is bullish. That's putting pressure on to raise interest rates. We are not at the high of last year, which was here, but we certainly are working our way up there, closer to the high than the low. We are looking at the 10-year yields now. We took out the high of last week and we closed above it as well, working our way up to the highs of last year. We are looking here at the 5-year yields. We closed above the high of last week. Here's the high of last year. So we're not at the highs of last year, but we certainly took out the highs of last week. And the momentum is up on all of them. One should expect a continued increase in the interest rates, which again, that has the effect to give strength to the US dollar. Let's go ahead and look at the cryptocurrency Bitcoin and the US dollar. We're looking at the, again, weekly candles over a 1 year duration. So Bitcoin, it closed above the high of last week. As well, made an all-time new high and took out the high of last year. Huge trading range for this past week. We'll look at the US dollar. Here's the high of last year. We're nowhere near there. What did we do this week? We made a new low and took out the low of last week, but we came back inside and closed inside that range of last week. What did I say January typically is? Tends to be a good month for US dollar. Maybe we're going to have a reverse here. Not necessarily go all the way back to the high of last year, unless the government does that, possibly changing interest rates. But just something you could be concerned of. Why? Commodities all priced in US dollar. Higher US dollar typically brings down the price of commodities. But if there's a short supply and a big demand, commodities can still remain high. Let's look at the currency pairs against the US dollar. Going to look at the currency pairs first from the futures market. Currencies trade in different exchanges. Chicago Merchandise Exchange. Those currencies are price symbol, always start with the / followed by the number 6 and then the letter of the pair. There's also currencies that trade on a Forex market. You can also trade the currencies in the stock market. I'll go over several of those here with symbols. So the biggest heavily weighted currency in the US dollar is the euro. makes up the biggest percentage. So when it moves, it has the biggest effect on the price action of the US dollar. Euro made a high, took out the high of last week, and took out the all-time high for the past 12 months and closed back inside the range of last week. The candle type is considered a bearish pin bar. People typically look for that as a reversal signal to go lower. Where would a potential trade signal be? Well, some traders would go, if next week, anytime, if we start taking out the low of here last week, they would look to go short. And where do you go put your stop on? Well, good money management. Join Patreon, I'll explain that. Japanese yen took out the high of last week and took out the low of last week. Yeah, but would not take out the high of last year. So it's in a consolidation. But look at that. The momentum's been to the upside. Staircase patterns higher high. That's the biggest, second biggest currency in the US dollar index is the yen. Now we're looking at the pound. Pound's the third biggest currency in the US dollar index. Took out the high of last week and took out the all-time high of last year and then closed back inside the range. But the momentum is still upward. So the takeaway, let's look at the top 3 heavily weighted currencies in the US dollar index. What did they all do? They all took out the highs of last week. The momentum's upward still. The fourth biggest currency in the US dollar index is the Canadian dollar, neighbors to the north. It took out the high of last week and took out the high of last year and closed above the high of last week, just shy of closing above the high of all time. So the momentum also is giving strength to the upside to US dollar, to the Canadian dollar. Swiss franc took out the high of last week and took out the high of last year and closed back inside the range here, back inside that consolidation. Again, looks like a reversal signal there. Same place to look for entry on the faster time frames, intraday or daily, using the low of here, this weekly. Australian dollar. Took out the high of the US dollar last week and took out the high of last year. Very strong, the strongest, or the one I would say, probably was the strongest currency against the US dollar in the ones I'm following for last year. The momentum, look at that, it's in a trend. Very strong for the Australian dollar against the US dollar. Consolidation phase, where it's good to look for entry signals and to catch it, hopefully the right direction in the trend. So if you took it on the breakout here, you're doing very well. If you took it when it retested this demand zone, caught it up there, you're doing very well. So takeaway, look at the weekly candles, the current weekly candle. You notice very few close green. So the strongest one here again is the Australian and the Canadian, both closed green and both closed above the high of last week. I'll be focusing on those as leadership. Very strong. On to the next. So the 3 biggest pairs, currencies in the US dollar index, I said, is the euro, the yen, and the pound. So let's start looking off the euro pairs to see how the euro is doing against other top currencies. Again, the euro, US dollar, we already spoke about it. Took out the high of last week and took out the high of last year. The euro yen. The euro took out the high of last week and took out the high of last year, giving strength to the euro against the yen. The euro pound. Yellow candle. What does that mean? It means the high and low did not go above or below last week. Indecision, in consolidation. The struggle is real. Remember, last year, last month, England left the EU. And again, my bias is going to see the pound get stronger against the euro. Euro, Canadian dollar. Lower low, lower high. Giving strength to Canadian dollar when this price goes down, because it appears Euro CAD, that means the Canadian dollar is getting stronger against the Euro, going down. Interesting. Canada is heavily commodity-based nation. Euro Swiss franc. Wow, lower low, lower high. So again, the Swiss franc is the stronger one here against the Euro. So I guess as soon as the UK leaves the EU, the Euro start getting weaker against all other currency pairs, but not the US dollar. The Euro is getting stronger against the US dollar, but the other pairs are getting weaker. Wow, kind of makes us look like a loser. That's not good. Bad leadership. Euro, US dollar. Aussie took out the low of last week and took out the all-time low of last year. So that gives strength to the Aussie dollar, gaining strength against the Euro. Wow. Again, I would not want to be a holder of the Euro against these other currencies. The Euro is getting weak and the US dollar is getting weak against other currency pairs. The second biggest currency in the US dollar is the yen. So let's look at the yen pairs. US dollar yen. Yep. Took out the high of last week, but nowhere near the high of last year. Euro yen, we already discussed that. The euro is gaining strength against the yen. Pound yen took out the high of last week, but closed back inside that range. And we did not take out the high of last year. But again, this is the pound gaining strength against the yen to the upside. Canadian dollar yen, where we did take out the high of last week, but not the high of last year. It's in consolidation. Still, the Canadian dollar is gaining strength against the yen. The two big safe haven currencies besides the US dollar, Swiss franc and Japanese yen. So took out the high of last week, but not the high of last year. So again, the strength is going into the Swiss franc against the Japanese yen. This was a supply zone, this red horizontal line. There were sellers up here back in that time period and this time period. So we're going to see what happens when it goes up here. Right now, the momentum's to the upside. Look for an opportunity, a break above here, to possibly trade long, or a reversal to trade short. Watch that really closely. Safe haven currencies. Where are they going? Are they going to the euro? Going to the Swiss franc or the yen? Aussie, yen. Wow. Took out the high of last week and the high of last year. Super strong Aussie. Look at that trend. Wow. Outstanding. Let's look at the last currency pairs. The pound. We already discussed the pound US dollar. Pound is gaining strength. Pound yen, we already discussed that. Euro pound, yep, already discussed that inside candle and decision there. Pound Canadian dollar, wow, big sell-off. So that was the Canadian dollar gaining strength against the pound. Pound Swiss franc, it's in a consolidation. It did go right above and below this inside candle, but still in consolidation for that pound Swiss franc indecision. And the pound Australian dollar, huge favor. It went lower, giving strength to the Aussie dollar against the pound. So the takeaway is the strongest currency I'm seeing, I just showed you, the leadership is Australian dollar, followed by the pound. And the weakest one is the US dollar. If you like this market information I've shared and want to learn more with greater detail, step-by-step training, I have a Patreon page. I share trade ideas for earning monthly income. Below in the description box, click Show More. Scroll down. This link here, click on it. Take you here to my Patreon page. Select a membership and join. Then you have access to unlock my posts.